Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ethereum Update. I'm Bob Chow. So in this video, I'm going to do part 2 of my explanation of what's going on between Ripple and R3. Specifically, I'm going to explain some more of the details regarding the litigation between R3 and Ripple. And I'm going to look at my previous video, and in the comments section, some of you guys have had some good questions. I'm looking at a question from World Peacemaker 2000, where a World Peacemaker says, if R3 wins, is it going to lower XRP price? And you know what? That's a great question. I think at this point in time, it's really too early to say who's going to win and who's going to lose. I think that R3 certainly has a case, but even if R3 has a case, the two sides may end up settling, and then in that case, it's not a clear. There's not a clear winner if things get settled out of court, basically. So I think that it's kind of too early to tell right now, but I think R3 definitely has a case. Another question asked by World Peacemaker is also, what date is the court case? Well, just to go through the chronology of what's happened, as you guys know, the Delaware court declined jurisdiction over this matter. So they said, go to a different court, guys. So on September the 8th, Ripple actually filed suit against R3 in California on September the 8th. So Ripple is saying, R3, you guys are so bad. You guys misrepresented yourselves, and it was fraudulent. It was negligent, and basically Ripple is actually trying to go after R3 in California. Okay, now on September the 11th, R3 filed suit against Ripple in New York, and I'm going to explain why these two parties went to the two different venues, New York versus California, but R3 went and filed suit against Ripple in New York, okay? So each side is kind of suing each other. One's in California, one's in New York, okay? And so just to answer your question, that's when the suits were filed, September the 8th, September the 11th. The court decision could take months for the court to decide on who wins. There's going to be a lot of briefs going back and forth, so the decision is it's not going to be for a few months, if there's a decision at all, because as I said before, the two parties may end up just settling out of court. Andrew Betton said, have you seen the contract between Ripple and R3? That's a great question. And I'm going to include a link to all of the court documents through the New York State clerk. And basically, you can go to that website and then type in the number that I provide at the bottom of this link. At the bottom of the video, I'll provide the number to type in, and you can see all the court documents. All the documents have been submitted to evidence. So there are two documents, as I said in the last video, the technology agreement and the options contract, okay? Now, there's a little bit of ambiguity as to how these two documents relate to each other. Ripple is basically saying that the technology agreement is the governing document, and if you violate the technology agreement, then we can take away the options contract, okay? But R3 is arguing that the options contract kind of stands alone. And I think R3 has a point, because we're going to take a look at the options contract in a little bit. And on its face, it appears to have language that implies that these two documents are separate and that the options contract stands alone. So to answer your question, have you seen the contract between Ripple and R3? The technology agreement is not a part of evidence, but the options contract is. So it kind of depends on what you mean by contract and what the court decides as the governing contract. The only thing that's within the documents right now, within evidence, is the options contract. And we're going to go into that a little bit. So, to answer the question, why does R3 file in New York? And why does Ripple file in California? What difference does it make? And I think I have a guess as to why each one wants to file in separate jurisdictions. And my guess is that it involves the parole evidence rule. Now, we all live in the United States, and California and New York are both a part of the United States, but each state applies its set of laws a little bit differently. And what the parole evidence rule is it's a rule that prevents the court from examining what's called extrinsic evidence outside the contract. So basically what the parole evidence rule says is if the parties have written down, if you've entered into a written contract, we're just going to look at the contract and we're going to look at the piece of paper, the four corners of the contract, whatever's inside the contract is what governs. And, any representations outside of this piece of paper, that's not considered, okay? So the parole evidence rule blocks out these extrinsic factors, these representations outside of the actual literal piece of paper document, okay? And New York has a far stricter parole evidence rule as compared to California. So New York is going to really look at this document and say, we're going to look at this document closely, and we're not going to really consider any of the words that were said in creating the document. That is, we're just going to look at the words of the document. What it says is what it says, okay? Now, the court can always consider whatever it wants to, but in general, New York really just looks at what's on that piece of paper, and if you say statements before and after, that doesn't really count. On the other hand, California looks at the piece of paper, looks at the actual written contract, and then also considers what was said between the parties. It considers whether or not what was said between the parties can clarify anything in this paper contract, okay? So as you can see, R3 clearly would prefer a stricter parole evidence rule because all of the representations that Ripple alleges that R3 broke, all of these allegations, these representations were made through like emails and through talking, right? As I said before yesterday. All of the terms that Ripple alleges that R3 is broken are oral, are through email, and they're not really in that document. So if a very strict parole evidence rule is applied, then maybe all of those representations are just cleared away. They're not even considered by the court. The court just looks at whatever's in that paper document. So that's why R3 wants a strict parole evidence rule in New York, whereas Ripple would maybe prefer a more lenient parole evidence rule in California. And as I said before, these are just my own opinions. This is not legal advice to anybody, okay? And this is not investment advice either. This is just my own personal opinion, okay? Now, I also wanted to take a look at the options contract, and you guys can look at this options contract within the link that I'll provide to you guys, okay? And what's kind of funny about this options contract, it says, this option is issued for good and valid consideration, comma, the receipt and sufficiency of which is hereby acknowledged, comma, to R3 Holdco LLC. So what's so funny is that on the face of the contract, this is the very first sentence, it says that this option is given to R3 in exchange for good and valid consideration, which means that the document is acknowledging that R3 has basically fulfilled its end of the contract, is issued for good and valid consideration, the receipt and sufficiency of which is hereby acknowledged. So it's almost an acknowledgement. Well, it basically appears to be an acknowledgement that we're giving you this option in exchange for whatever you give to us, whatever benefit you give to us, and we acknowledge that the benefit you give to us is sufficient and acknowledged. So wow, on the face of the option, Ripple appears to acknowledge that R3 had sufficiently fulfilled whatever it needed to fulfill in order to receive the options contract. Yeah, in my opinion, that's a pretty powerful statement right on the face of the option contract. Okay, so I'm gonna let you guys take a look at this, and you guys can come to your own conclusions. I hope this video has been helpful for you guys. Please feel free to continue leaving comments. As I said, I read all of them, and hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. If it was, please feel free to subscribe and like, and I'll try to make my next video more optimistic about Ripple. Okay, and as I said before, I am a holder of XRP. I love Ripple. I love XRP. I'm not trying to spread FUD, okay? Sorry. But I'm just looking at what's been going on between XRP and R3, and it looks kind of good for R3, okay? So that's just my own opinion. And in future briefs, we're gonna look to see whether or not the parole evidence rule is brought up, and I think it's gonna be brought up in the next few exchanges. Okay, guys, I'll see you guys later, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.